afternoon, everyone. I'm Donna Maria, and welcome to Indie Business Radio for July 9th, 2007. Today's show is sponsored by Monave Mineral Cosmetics. Modern, natural, and versatile. That's Monave. Visit Monave.com for makeup that suits your skin and your lifestyle. And Monave is spelled Monave. They look forward to seeing you there. They've got some great cosmetics, and they're all natural, no animal products, no dyes, great for your skin. I am so excited to be here today. It's been a couple of weeks, maybe even a month or so, when the show's been kind of off and on. And I want to start today by thanking all of you who have sent me cards and letters and emails and notes and flowers and phone calls to express your condolences on the death of my father. I really appreciate that. Every single note, every single phone call, I have appreciated. I can't respond to everyone individually, but I want you to know how much your expressions of support and encouragement and your kindness have meant to me. Thank you so very much. And in the spirit of my dad, we are going to move on from that note to the exciting note of welcoming today's guest. You all know how I love to share information and expertise of my own and that of other people on how to promote your businesses. And today we've got an expert on the topic of promotion of your business from the perspective of a book publisher. Francine Silverman is the editor and publisher of Book Promotion Newsletter, a biweekly online newsletter for authors of all genres. She is also the author of Book Marketing from A to Z, which is a compilation of the best marketing strategies of 325 book authors from all over the world. She has also authored a great book to help you find radio shows to promote your books and your products. And, of course, this is one of the radio shows that's mentioned in the book. Thank you very much. Francine Silverman, welcome to Indie Business Radio.
Oh, thank you so much, Donna Maria. I didn't know about your dad, and let me express my condolences.
Thank you.
It was a shock when I heard it. I didn't know.
Thank you. Well, I've been communicating with you for, several months now, and I know you've referred some of your clients to my radio show, and I've just been delighted to have them, and I'm so excited that I finally convinced you to come on. So it's going to be a really exciting show. And Francine, I want to start by asking you if you'll give us a little bit of an idea of who you are. What's your background? How did you come into small business ownership yourself?
Okay. I started out my writing career as a newspaper reporter, and I did that for a few years, and then I decided that I wanted to be, I also did freelance writing, and I wanted to be a travel writer. So I found that it was difficult, but I published a few articles, and then I wrote 2 600-page guidebooks, local guidebooks, Catskills Alive and Long Island Alive. And they both came out, the second edition of Catskills Alive came out in 2003, and the first edition of Long Island Alive the same year. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know how to promote them. I really was sort of floundering. So I decided to start a newsletter online, and because I really was hungry for other authors and to find out how they promoted their books. And I sent out a questionnaire to every new subscriber, and in 2 years, I built up the newsletter to hundreds of subscribers, and I had so much wonderful information that I decided to put it into a book, and that was Book Marketing from A to Z. Then somebody suggested to me that I actually started a radio show. I had a radio show for a while, and somebody suggested to me that I should package my services into an online publicity service.
Okay.
So I decided to do that. I said, you can get my newsletter, you can be on my radio show, and you could, and I'll do your online publicity.
Oh, great.
So when I started to do online publicity, I found that I started with newspapers, but it was very difficult. But as soon as I started trying to get authors on radio shows, I got so many responses, and I had so many radio shows that I said, I ought to put that into a book.
Right.
So I put that into a book, talk radio for authors. Now I'm working on another book, which you're in also, which is called Radio Wants You, an intimate portrait of 500 radio shows that welcome guests, and it's directed at everyone, not just authors.
Good, good. We want to talk about that, too.
Yes.
Great. Well, and it sounds like you are broadening from working to help authors promote their books to helping business owners promote their products and services, whatever there may be.
Well, as far as radio is concerned, anybody that has a product or a service can be a potential guest on a radio show.
Yeah, and it's such an amazing medium, too, and it's a lot of fun. And I want to start by asking you, focusing in a little bit on books, and I want to broaden it to encompass, the wider spectrum of people. But I have a question about books, Francine. Okay. Everybody seems to have a book. There's books that are, of course, traditionally published, and there's self-published books, and there's e-books, and the list just kind of just goes on and on. Can anyone become an author, Francine?
If they like to write and they have a lot of discipline, I think anybody can be an author. If you have something to say and you have the discipline to sit down and to write it, and to learn the publishing industry, what it's all about, then anybody can be an author. It's like anything else. If you want it badly enough, you can do it.
And what are some of the differences, Francine, between an author who's promoting herself in a self-published book and an author who's promoting herself in a book that was published by a publishing house?
All right. My first two books were traditionally published. It was a small publishing house. So my books had a distributor, and they are in Barnes & Noble and Borders and so forth. But I still had to do the promotion. The publisher did not do any promotion, which is true of all publishers. But at least there was an editor, and the editor designed the book, and it looked very nice. Then I did these last two books I did POD, print on demand. And while the covers are beautiful, the inside it's digitally printed, and they print it exactly the way you give it to them.
Okay.
So that if you make a mistake or you put two lines in where there should be one line, it comes out in the book.
Okay.
So you have to be super, super, super careful. Now you can edit it. They give you a chance to edit it and fix it up. But, like 2 or 3 times. Then after that, they charge you. But the design of the inside is not particularly pretty. It's just digitally printed. It's not. And and again, they don't have a distributor, so you have to push even harder than if you're traditionally published.
And Francine, if someone wants to do print on demand, do you recommend then that they engage the services of someone who is able to sort of graphically lay the book out in a more attractive manner?
You can hire somebody. You can hire somebody to do it. In other words, they'll take anything. If you work with a graphic artist and you give it to them, they'll print it up that way.
Mm-hmm. So that sounds like a good way to kind of get around the problem of having the content there, but it not being, too jazzy or, laid out, in an appealing way on the inside.
Yeah, a lot of the books, I've read a lot of the books that were printed by, I used Infinity Publishing, and I've looked at a lot of their books, and a lot of their books look fine. Maybe the author spent more money.
Yeah.
Maybe they hired an editor on the side. Or a proofreader,
right.
Or they hired somebody. It's hard to know.
And when you talk about print on demand, does that mean you can literally print 1 or 2 books at a time and not pay for more than that?
Exactly. It's printed exactly. Whenever you order a book, they print it.
And so, in terms of promoting oneself as an author, I've had authors on the show who have authored books that are published by really big publishing houses, Time, Life, all the big players, Random House. And then I've had last week's guest has an e-book. It's only available on our website. It's not even at Amazon. It's an e-book, but a pretty good one. So in terms of people promoting themselves to get on radio shows with their books, have you noticed any differences between the reception of the radio show hosts or the producers?
No, because hosts are not really interested in your books. They want something that will benefit their audience.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have something to say, maybe it's the content of your book. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's what you do on the side. Mm-hmm. Whatever it is that can benefit their audience, they're interested in.
And so
there are doctors, psychologists, people who are not authors that go on the radio.
Right. And so for someone who has any kind of area of expertise, of course a lot of my listeners are cosmetics manufacturers, and many of them are so intimately familiar with the cosmetics manufacturing process and all the ingredients, and many of them are experts in herbal things or aromatherapy things. And so if they've authored a book on that topic, whether it's an e-book or not, they could come on to a show that caters to an audience that's interested in those kinds of natural things, natural living, organic, green living, things like that, and they could share their expertise and their book on a radio show.
Exactly, and they can also look at business shows because they're in a business, and maybe a small business.
Right.
There are a lot of shows for small businesses.
So many different kinds of areas of expertise that you can write about, and you can pick radio shows, as your book says, right, that sort of target that audience and pitch yourself to the show host or the producer.
Exactly. Because, listen, hosts need guests.
We do, don't we? So now, Francine, what makes radio an attractive outlet?
Well, what it makes it attractive is you can sit in your pajamas and you can do an interview. That's what makes it so attractive.
Okay.
And you can do 5 shows and just sitting in your chair.
So as long as you have the time and the telephone, you can hook it up.
Exactly.
Are you in your pajamas?
No, I'm not, but you could be.
You could be. Neither am I. But there are those days, and that's a really good point. Is that and your book makes this point too about using technology and for small businesses having to be efficient and cost effective at the same time. It's a great point that you make that you can just do it sort of at your leisure when it's flexible for you. And have you found, Francine, that so many shows, with the internet now, there's podcasts and things, and you can even schedule it when it's convenient for you?
Exactly. No, there are every day new shows are opening.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it's funny. I spend all day trying to look for shows, and I mean, it's just amazing. I think I know them all. I just ordered a list from Joe Saba. He has a CD where he has it's actually an Excel sheet with information on it, like the name of the show and the email and stuff like that, and the call letters of the show.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to look for those shows, and I realized I haven't even scratched the surface. There are so many radio shows.
Right, it's kind of like technology, and once you've scratched the surface and you have you've got a book out, well, now you could probably update it after just a couple of months with a bunch of new shows.
Exactly, and you have to. It's like a guidebook. It gets dated very quickly, so you really have to keep it up to date.
Well, it really is a wonderful resource. I'll have to let people know. You're obviously an expert at what you do, but your compilation of this information is just wonderful. And for anyone who's looking for avenues to promote their book or their products or their expertise on a radio show, Fran's book is a really great place to go, and you can get her book and other information about her at bookpromotonnewsletter.com. Now, Fran, let's say I have a book, and I've never been on radio before. I don't know what to do, but my book is a good book, selling kind of decent on my website or from my blog. What do I do once I've identified a show that I'd like to be on?
Well, I think that what you would do is, if short of reading my book, my new book, which will give you what the author wants in terms of a press kit or, you know, an email bio, I think if you've never been on the radio before, I think you should look for your local shows.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, see just the fact that you're a local author.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it doesn't matter what the topic is, but the fact that you're a local author, maybe the show will have you on. And it's good to start, you know, small.
And sometimes that's news in and of itself for radio hosts, that someone in the neighborhood has a book out.
Mm-hmm. So I would start small, and then you can move on.
And do you find that people that kind of start in their own backyard and start small, that they kind of use it as a training ground to kind of graduate to bigger shows or larger markets?
I don't really know. Because I only assume that these authors are savvy and that they've been speaking. They're on speaking engagements, and so when I send their bios to hosts, I just assume that they know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't think of them as being, you know, naive about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
And how do you choose a good fit for your book and your expertise on a radio show?
Well, I have the bios of the authors, and I put them into categories. So I have the people who write about animals. I have, you know, on animal categories. I have business categories. I have women. I have parenting. You know, it just goes on and on. And so when I see a show that seems to fit, I send them the bio.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I do books, I find that it's a wonderful way to make friends with the radio host. Because as soon as they sent me the questionnaire back, I say, "Oh, is that what your show's about? Can I send you some horses?" And it works. It works.
So if someone's doing this on their own, let's just say someone has an area of expertise, but they don't have a book. They don't have to be excluded from the radio circuit, right?
Not at all. Not at all. But I would call the show to find out what the show wants, because in my book, my next book, I asked them, and some of them say they want press kits. So I think it would be a good idea just to call the show and find out what they require.
Mm-hmm. And then they'll tell you what to put together, and then you don't have to guess anymore.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that certainly is good advice. So when you're doing radio, what are some of the things that you're finding that are sort of trendy in any areas today? What are some of the hot topics in radio that our listeners can think about? You know, that they have some expertise in that they could use to share with listeners on a radio show.
Well, I can tell you what the number of shows that I get, you know, in terms of what I get a lot of and what I get a little of. I would say that this time around I have more paranormal shows than anything else. I mean, that is a hot topic, paranormal. You know, mysticism, clairvoyance, you name it. Also, spirituality, holistic medicine, health is a big topic.
Let's talk about that for a second, holistic medicine and health, because a lot of my listeners are in some of those areas. They are manufacturers of like aromatherapy products, herbal products, and things like that. And I just see, as you just said, that area is just so ripe for contributions of people from all walks of life who have learned about remedies with herbs, folklore remedies, how to make your remedies, how to fix foods that would complement, you know, your lifestyle. I mean, there just seems to be so much richness and depth there. Your people would really have a lot of shows to go on, because I have come across shows like that. And it's, you know, I wonder. You just said small business. That's another area that any small business owner, you've obviously got some expertise if you've been in business for any period of time. You must know something that could help someone else, right?
I don't make very much money, so I can't really tell them too much. But I can tell you that small business, there are a lot of radio shows that devote themselves to small business. Yeah.
Well, this is certainly one of them. And you know what, Francine? I've noticed something. Our want your take on this because you've been doing this for a long time. I am getting email messages and requests from people to be on their radio show for a fee. Can you tell me a little bit about, and our audience who may get messages like that as well, how does that work? I mean, I have a radio show, and we have guests on the show, and obviously as a part of the show, the guest business or book or whatever is promoted, but really you're here, and I appreciate you being here. You're sharing your expertise and things that you know that can help some other people. How should people deal with those kinds of requests?
Donna Maria, I had a radio show, and a couple of people said to me, "Oh, you should charge your guests. You should charge your guests." And I kept saying, "I don't feel right about it. I don't feel right about it." But look what you're doing for them. Charge your guests. So when I sent out emails to those future guests, they all declined. And I thought to myself, I don't blame them. I don't blame them because I don't like the idea. Because they didn't want to pay.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, that's something to think about. I mean, with the advent of the internet and technologies, there are so many different ways to get your message out there. And I know, of course, traditional radio and the broadcasters and things like that, of course, it's all editorial content, so they don't pay. The guests don't pay for anything. But with so many different business models, I guess it is the business model that some people have adopted. But what you're saying is that you got all negative responses when you asked for that.
Yeah, well, you know what it is. If you have sponsors, then you don't have to worry about it. If you don't have sponsors, I was paying a lot of money to have my radio show, and all these shows charge you. And if you don't have sponsors, you really do want to defray your expenses. But I don't like the idea of charging guests. I just don't think it's fair.
Mm-hmm. Well, and there are so many different ways to get the message out there without having to do it that way. So, Francine, so I've got a book, and I'm interested in being on a particular radio show. Let's just say if I don't have the time or the inclination to go through them one by one, I really just want to collect a bunch of email addresses and send them all the same thing, even though I may, obviously miss some because I'm not sending them what they want. What would you say are the core items that I would need to include, or that any of our listeners would need to include in an email message, to a producer or a show host?
I think you want to tell them what you can, how your talk will benefit their audience. What is it about you and your experience that will provide information that will be of use to their listeners? And
can listeners mention their products in that email, or should they cut that out?
Sure, absolutely, because otherwise they know nothing about you. In other words, what you're doing is you're using your products as a starting off point to present your case for why you should have me on the radio.
Okay, and so obviously, I guess you're saying that with the products is how the show host knows that you have the expertise that they can use.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just, I've read a bunch of books on herbalism and I'm ready to be on your show. I've read these books, I've started my business, I make herbal products, and I can offer tips and expertise to your audience.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
Good. And so it's a great way, is it not, to sort of expand your circle of influence from products only to, giving yourself a little bit more wiggle room and maybe even additional income options as you grow as an expert in the area where your products are in?
If you have a product, I think it's a crime if you don't go on the radio.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Well, I think that the idea is that if you want publicity for your product, radio is one way, and a very good way, to get the word out. Why do people advertise on the radio?
Right.
Because they know that the people are listening. People are listening. Get the word out.
What if you're afraid if you're not a public speaker and you don't see yourself as somebody who is kind of experienced at talking, or maybe you're just a little bit shy? Can you offer some tips to somebody who might be out there going, okay, I don't want to commit the crime of not being on radio, but I'm terrified. What can people do to kind of get themselves?
Well, I'll tell you, you can join Toastmasters as I did, because in fact I was on TV this morning locally discussing Toastmasters and how wonderful it is because you get over your fear of public speaking. In my first book, in my book Talk Radio for Authors, I asked the host what are their guests from hell, and they said that, to sum up, they said they give one-word answers, they dominate the interview, or they're self-promoting. So the first one applies to those people who are shy. If they're not going to speak and they're not going to contribute, then they really don't belong on the radio.
Okay. So when they talked about being self-promoting, how does someone know how to draw the line between mentioning their products and sharing their expertise?
Well, did you ever hear an interview where somebody said, oh, as I said in my book, and I said this in my book, and I said that in my book? It's very annoying.
Right. Right. Or I really can't answer that question because you have to buy my book.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. In other words, it's people who are just blabbering on, and, you know, they just keep mentioning their book.
Have you found, Francine, that in the course of interviews, people don't really need to worry too much about that because your product is or your book is going to come up in the interview anyway? Yeah,
the host is usually very good about mentioning the book. I mean, look at the way you mention my book.
Well, it's kind of a natural part of the conversation. I guess a radio host wants the audience to know that, you know, you should join this show and spend your time because I have an expert who can help you. You know, otherwise, how are you going to get anybody to listen?
Mm-hmm. And when I had my show, I would start the show off with an introduction of the author and the name of the book and who it was published by and their website, and then we went on from there.
Mm-hmm. So tell me, how does your service work to help people who have books, Francine?
Okay. What happens is I charge very little. In fact, it's criminal what I charge. Okay. I charge $60 a year for the service. And I ask people to send me a bio, and below the bio to put bulleted items of what the areas that they're comfortable speaking or writing about, because that's very helpful in my figuring out, you know, where to send their bios.
Right.
And basically that's it. And then I put their bios under the category, and then when I find a show that fits their expertise, I send them the bios.
Mm-hmm. Well, it seems to work. I mean, I haven't been counting, but you've sent me several really great and popular guests, and of course I thank you for that. And not to mention, there's another great reason to become involved in radio, networking.
You're talking about getting. You mean these authors? If these authors are on the radio?
Well, I'm just talking about another perk of becoming involved in radio shows and promoting your expertise and your products through radio is that you connect with a lot of other people, and so networking. I mean, I met you through what you're doing.
Yes. In other words, everything is connected. The newsletter, the online promotion, the books, all the radio shows, everything is connected.
Now tell us about your newsletter, Francine.
My newsletter is written by the subscribers.
Now, that's interesting.
That's why the subscribers love it. They contribute the articles, they contribute the promotional coups, they contribute the kudos, they contribute feedback, they contribute tips. They have seminars that's coming up, so I put that in. Anything that they send me that I feel is of use, I put in the newsletter.
So your newsletter is a compilation of the ideas and experiences of your readers?
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, and I basically don't have to, it writes itself, basically.
Well, that's a nice newsletter to have. That's a whole other show there. We'll get you some tips on that, because we've actually done a show before on how important and helpful an online newsletter can be to a business. And one of the things that many people get stuck on is how much time it takes to actually put it together.
Well, they should have somebody in the business that likes to do it, and will be disciplined about it.
Yeah, because it is quite an undertaking. So you're saying $60 a year. So if there's somebody out there that's interested in engaging your services, you do this all year for people for $60 a year?
Yep. I'm ashamed to say it.
Well, no.
And my newsletter is very inexpensive as well. And if you don't use the service, it's $7.50 a year.
Okay, your online newsletter.
My online newsletter, yeah.
Okay, and that comes out twice a month.
That comes out, right, every other week, right. And it's been coming out every other week since 2003.
Mm-hmm. Now, what are some of the differences that you've noticed, or have you noticed, differences between, people's businesses before they start doing talk radio and after? What are some of the examples of some of your clients, and you don't have to name names, of course, but who are some people that have benefited, and how has it benefited them to get on radio as opposed to not?
That's a tough one. That's really a tough one. I'm sure that some of my subscribers have written to me, about some of the experiences that they had on the radio. But I don't know in the long term how it actually affected them. They haven't really let me know. So that
might be a good newsletter to get them to write.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Francine, when people are looking for a radio show, how much of an emphasis do you think should be placed on what the radio show itself does to promote the show?
You mean you're talking about the kind of show it is?
Well, let's just say you've identified 15 radio shows that you think you might be interested in, and you've analyzed them because the audience is relevant to you. You think that the audience would be interested in you, and therefore the host would be interested in getting you on the show. With so many radio shows out there on the internet, etc., how much do you think the guest, the person who wants to be on the show, should look at how that radio show is promoting the show? In other words, I could have you on a radio show and air it one time.
It's funny because some hosts are very good about it, very good about promoting their shows. They have it on their website, who's coming on, the past guests, the former guests, the future guests.
So it's easy to find that out, right? You just go to the website and look and see what they do.
And some guests don't do anything. It really depends.
So you really have to, if you're interested in kind of being more available on the internet, you kind of got to go a step beyond what the show is about and see what the producers or whoever they are doing to, get the word out about the show.
It's so hard to say. I mean, I got one of my subscribers, my clients, on a show in Washington, D.C., and I was thrilled that he got on it. And then I asked him, how did it go? And he said, oh, it was fine, but it was much too short. It was 15 minutes, and I had so much to say. And so, and then I got another one onto a show with the guy who played Vito on The Sopranos. He was doing a show, Chewing the Fat. And I got her on there, and she was thrilled. But then when I wrote her afterwards, I said, how did it go? She said, she said they were all disorganized and they didn't know what they were doing, and so it's very hard to say what shows really are going to go well, and it's just you just have to do a lot of them, and you just kind of have to put yourself out there. Exactly, and you have to wing it because sometimes it goes very well and sometimes it doesn't. And
well, I have a funny little story to share. You could probably chuckle at this. I had Paula Dean of the Food Network and, of course, the radio show and the magazine. She was on the show once several months ago, and she was a fabulous guest. I don't know if you've ever seen her show. She's very entertaining. She's very down to earth, and she's very open about how she, transitioned from being a single mom to this, entertainment personality. And that was back when we had breaks during the radio show. And after the second break, we were moving into the final segment. We took a break, and she very politely asked me, "Now, Donna Maria, aren't people supposed to be calling in to talk to me?" It was so funny because even Paula Dean has to, do the circuit and see, some are good and some are bad. And I thought we had a really nice time. But it was interesting because my show was fairly new at the time, internet radio, not as many people call in. And I just thought it was really interesting that she, if I hadn't told her, she'd never done internet radio before. She didn't really know what it meant. Her publicist just sent her the phone number to call in. The radio show starts at this time. The host is Donna Maria. Just be there on the phone. That was pretty much all she knew. And I thought it was kind of interesting that, that particular day we didn't have, I think we may have one phone call during that last segment, but she began to worry that no one was interested in what she had to say.
No.
I had to tell her, well, this is internet radio. It's a little bit different. And she didn't know anything about that, so I thought it was kind of interesting. Maybe lucky for me that she didn't, because I don't know if her publicist would have had her,
But you can have call-ins on internet radio.
Oh yeah, but I'm just saying we did have call-ins, but nobody was calling in that particular day.
Oh, I see.
And so that's what I'm saying. And she, I would give the people the call-in number and say it on the air. But sometimes people call in and sometimes they don't. And like you said, you just kind of have to do it. You never know. It could be the day of the week. It could be any number of reasons why people don't call in. And of course, on internet radio, it's not like people are driving around in their cars and they can pick up their cell phone and call. When you're in a car, you're sort of captive and you probably have the radio on or some kind of entertainment on. And the internet's a little bit different. I just thought that was kind of interesting.
It is interesting. Do you have your shows? Are your shows archived?
Yeah, they are archived, and they always were. But I thought it was kind of funny that I had an opportunity to explain to her that it wasn't her. necessarily, although I don't know, maybe it was her, but I don't know. It certainly was a great show, and I invite people to visit.
No, because people are busy. They're not always there exactly at 1:00 to listen to your show.
Exactly. Can you imagine that? They're not.
Well, I was on at 2:00, and I had one subscriber who called in. I think the whole time I was on. Nobody called.
Yeah, it's kind of, I get a lot of good feedback. For those of you who don't know, we do have all of our shows archived all the way back to 2005 at indiebusinessradio.com. So I invite you to visit there, and you can look in the 2006 archives and listen to that Paula Dean show. It's a great show talking about, where she talked a lot about, her transition from, being a single mom to growing a business. Everybody can benefit from that. So, Francine, what do you think about a person who is really just trying to just start out? They don't really have, their book's not out yet, their products are just getting started. What are some of the things that you would suggest they do to kind of get the ball rolling in the direction of talk radio?
Well, for one thing, if the book is not out, they have to do pre-promotion. So they have to decide on what radio shows they're going to target, and what print publications they're going to target, and who they're going to send press releases to. Mm-hmm. And you have to do this all before your book comes out, because once your book comes out, it's too late. So going on the radio is really just one of many things that you do.
What do you mean
promoting your book?
What do you mean once the book comes out, it's too late? You can't.
Well, because once the book comes out, you're busy. You're busy trying to get it into bookstores. You're trying to do book signings. You're just, and you want what you want. You want to get it. You want the book to be fresh when you go on the radio. You want to be able to say it's a new book. And if you don't do these things ahead of time, sometimes it's you miss the opportunity. Mm-hmm. So you have to start at least 9 months before.
Okay, so it's not like you want to go on a show and say her book came out last year.
Right.
Kind of want to have it be new.
Because, everybody likes new.
Right.
You know,
right. The newer it is, the better.
Mm-hmm.
So when you advise people about media in general, let's broaden it out a little bit from radio to the media in general, do you help people also get editorial magazine insertions or television shows, any other things, or are you strictly radio, Francine?
No, I'm strictly the internet. I do only online publicity, because if I did offline publicity, I'd have to charge a lot more.
So you mean you only do internet radio shows? Or
no,
do you do...
no, I do no, because all the radio shows are on the internet. They all have websites. I mean, except for the smallest stations in the Midwest somewhere, but they all have stations.
So
They're woefully inadequate, most of them, but they do have websites.
Yeah, you're right. There are a lot of them that could use a lot of help. So you help people get on internet radio as well as traditional broadcast radio.
Exactly, because all the stations are on the internet.
And are there any differences between getting booked on an internet radio show, which is internet only, like mine is internet only? We don't have a broadcast, signal, regulated by the FCC, traditional broadcast radio. Are there any differences between getting booked on an internet radio show, generally speaking, and getting booked on a traditional broadcast radio show that may be serving, a large city?
It really depends on the number of listeners. There are internet shows that have a lot of listeners, and there are small radio stations that don't have many listeners. So it really depends on the listening audience.
Mm-hmm. So have you noticed any general differences, though, between how the hosts deal with pitches from people that would like to be on their show?
No,
they're pretty much all the same?
It's all the same.
Really?
It's all the same.
Well, that makes it easier, because you don't have to kind of divide it up into segments. It's just radio.
No. The only thing that divides it up into segments is directories. Directories tend to stick to just the call letters, just to on-air programs.
Right, and so if all you do is go to the yellow pages, you're going to miss out.
Well, I'm talking about radio directories.
Oh, and that's why your book is so different.
Yeah, because my book doesn't distinguish between one kind of program and another. I even have podcasts in there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's even great. Now, let me ask you this, Francine.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a lot of turnover in terms of these podcasts and radio shows? I mean, I'm just guessing. Well, I don't know. That's why I'm asking you. But have you noticed that, some shows, they kind of come and go? How do you try to look for a show that's got some longevity?
Well, I tell you, I was discouraged from doing these books because people said to me, oh, there's such a turnover. But, if you do a guidebook, it also gets dated very quickly, which is why you have to keep updating travel guidebooks, because they get because they, establish and close, and it's just,
right.
So I think that you just have to update the book.
Right.
Like every year or every 2 years.
Right. Well, that could be good for you, right? Because it gives you can have the book be a sort of an annual thing.
Exactly.
And I would guess for people who are looking to be on radio, if you're looking for a show that you kind of want to be able to link to for the years to come and say, I was on this radio show, then don't you kind of want to look and see that they've got a little bit of a track record going on?
Well, some of them do have a track record, but sometimes the hosts move around.
Okay.
So sometimes the station is still there, but the host has moved on.
Right. That's a good point too. Well, it sounds like there's some general points and tips that people can go by, and you've done such a great job of sort of highlighting some of those. And I want to encourage everybody who wants to investigate talk radio in more depth to visit Fran's website at bookpromotonnewsletter.com. Not only is there information there about her book, but Fran has a bi-weekly newsletter, and she's also got some tips and things at the website, and even a book talk radio blog, Fran, which you've launched there, and that's a great resource too. So tell us a little bit about that blogging experience so far.
I tell you the truth, I'm so busy doing my new book that I haven't really paid much attention to my blog. But I've heard from people who do blogs that it really, really spikes, their search engine, rankings, and that it really does wonderful things. So I guess if you keep it current and people come to it, it's a very good thing.
Yeah, like you said, keeping it fresh.
Yeah, you have to really work on it, and I haven't really done it.
Well, Francine Silverman, thank you so much for joining me today on Indie Business Radio. Once again, bookpromotioonnewsletter.com. Fran, I hope I can get permission to bring you back and keep sending me those pitches because I've enjoyed your clients.
That's music to my ears, Don.
Well, it worked out well, and it's been wonderful. And speaking of blogging, you guys, on August the 6th, Eliza Sherman, the author of the Everything Blogging book, is going to be here to talk about blogging from A to Z. That is going to be a great show on August 13th. We've got Jill Iorato and John McKee, co-authors of books to help people learn how to communicate their message to the public more effectively and more efficiently. And for the next 2 weeks, our show engineer, who does such a great job of helping me put these shows together, is leaving me for a vacation. So we are not going to have a show for the next 2 Mondays. But I hope that you'll come back again on August the 13th. And in the meantime, please visit indiebusinessradio.com, where you can listen to all the archives of the show, and check out our new blog, indiebusinessblog.com. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the show today. I certainly have enjoyed having Francine, and we're going to be looking forward to a couple of weeks off, take a break. I'll see you on August the 6th when we have Eliza Sherman talking about blogging. In the meantime, this is Indie Business Radio. Enjoy your life, build your business, and have your way.